Christ follower until I was 20, but when I did, it was through some friends who invited me to a college outreach ministry. One of my early heroes, as you might imagine, was the president of that national campus movement. He was smart, disciplined, gifted teacher. I read his books, I idolized his leadership, and even tried to model parts of my life after his. Then I got the opportunity to hear him speak at a conference. Not only that, but he and his wife were going to lead a breakout seminar on marriage designed for 20-something singles like me who were just beginning to think about marriage for their own life. It was a smaller setting, so I got to see him and his wife up close and even ask some questions. It was everything I hoped it would be, and I walked away more impressed and inspired than ever. Then just a few months later, the news broke. It came out that he had been in a several months long affair with another woman. To make matters worse for me, when I did the math, I realized he was still in that affair while he was leading that marriage seminar with his wife. The one I sat in and took notes on, the one where I was thinking, this is who I want to be in my marriage. The utter sheer hypocrisy of it made me want to go find a corner in a room and throw up. I don't know if you've ever been burned like that or disillusioned like I was. It makes you question everything. But I didn't abandon the Christian faith. And though it wouldn't be the last time I experienced that disillusionment at the hands of someone who professed to be a Christian, I still haven't abandoned it. Because when I thought about it, I realized something very important. That hypocrisy doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. And Jesus went on the war path against hypocrisy. In fact, he's the one who started the war. Have you ever seen masks representing comedy and tragedy in ancient Greece? In ancient Greek theater, actors wore all sorts of masks that represented their character. Since all actors back then were male, it also allowed a male actor to play a female role. Do you know what the Greek word was for one of those actors? They were known as hypocrites. The art of the actor was that from the moment he put on his mask, his entire conduct on stage would reflect the role. He was immersed in it. Now, obviously for an actor, that is the goal. But Jesus took hold of this word and he applied it to people who were spiritual actors. Let me read you some of his words. He said, everything they do is for show. Hypocrites, for you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. He was just warming up. Here's one more. Hypocrites, he said, you pretend to be holy with all your long public prayers in the streets while you're evicting widows from their homes. Hypocrites, you're like beautiful mausoleums full of dead men's bones and of foulness and corruption. You try to look like saintly men, but underneath those pious robes of yours are hearts besmirched with every sort of hypocrisy and sin. So what many people cite as a reason for rejecting Christianity and Christ has nothing to do with authentic Christian faith, much less Jesus. He was totally on board with despising hypocrisy. Having said that, let's be equally clear about what hypocrisy isn't. Hypocrisy isn't when somebody falls below your expectation of perfection. It isn't catching someone who says they follow Jesus committing a sin. If that did define being a hypocrite, add me to the list. Come spend a day with me and I will absolutely disappoint you. We probably wouldn't even last until 9 a.m. before chinks in my assumed to be perfect armor would begin to show. So does that automatically make me a hypocrite? Just because I consistently fail at being like, living like, acting like Jesus? Just because I screw up? Just because I sin? So a Christian means perfection? I certainly hope no one truly believes this. Yet the idea runs rampant, and not just among those who aren't Christian, but among those who are, or who would like to be. So many times I've heard someone say, I don't want to say I'm a Christian, or I don't want to become a Christian, or I don't want to go to church as if I am a Christian, or I don't want to be baptized as a Christian, and then it's always followed by, because I don't want to be a hypocrite. Here's the thinking behind those statements. That being a Christ follower means being perfect, and being a hypocrite means saying you're a Christ follower and not being perfect. So since they don't want to be a hypocrite, they won't associate themselves with Christians, the church, or Christ. But that is as screwed up as real hypocrisy is. The truth is that the opposite of hypocrisy is not perfection. The opposite of hypocrisy is spiritual authenticity. I fail 1,000 times a day. But the real question is whether I'm more like Jesus now than I was 5 years ago. The Christian faith is unique in holding to the idea that the first step toward authentic spirituality is not about having your act together, but in knowing that you don't. This means an authentic Christian life isn't marked by perfection, it's marked by transformation. C.S. Lewis once wrote about this in a way that I found helpful. He said, You may observe that a particular Christian woman that you know, let's call her Mary, has a much more difficult time keeping away from gossip than a non-Christian woman that you know. Let's call her Betty. So you see Mary, the gossiping Christian, and Betty, the non-gossiping non-Christian. It naturally makes you think Mary is a hypocrite, or that maybe the whole Christian life thing doesn't have a lot of potency. But that misses the whole process of transformation. Here's the real issue. What would Mary be like if she were not in a relationship with Christ? And what would Betty be like if she were? We're all works in progress. We have different areas of strengths and weaknesses. God meets every one of us where we are and begins there. I remember several years ago trying to describe this to a man who was really into music and particularly liked the group Metallica. Metallica is a great band, one of the most successful rock bands of all time. Their third album, Master of Puppets, is often cited as one of the most influential albums in rock history. Their fifth album debuted at #1 on the Billboard chart. So did their 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 9th. They were inducted eventually into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I understood his interest in the band, and I appreciated it. One of their classic songs and biggest hits to date is Enter Sandman. So I said to him, okay, I was kind of reaching for how I could express this to him. I said, imagine a bunch of elementary school kids decide that they are going to tackle that song and that they're going to perform it at a school fair for people who have never heard Enter Sandman or anything else by Metallica before. If those people hear the performance by that elementary school band, would it be fair or even reasonable for them to assess the worth of Metallica's music based on their performance? He said, I don't know where you're going with this, but I'll play along. He said, those kids would butcher it. They're just kids. Their performance of it would have nothing to do with how good that song is or how good a band Metallica is. I said, I agree. Now I want you to play that out spiritually. There are a lot of us Christians walking around trying to live for Jesus, but we're like elementary school kids in a garage band attempting to perform Metallica. Don't judge the composer or the music by those performances. Our failure at living the life Jesus lived has nothing to do with Jesus. Christians may disappoint you. Jesus won't.